There's not a wave out.
Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're gonna be jumping into another session of Epic 7 Out today. Got some more first impressions for you guys. That's right, this time around we're gonna be looking at Argent Wave's Hwayoung, and she is gonna be the only ML5 that's gotten a limited version of themselves, which is a really cool precedent to have because it means that we have a bunch of options to potentially go for in the future, right? So how about Swimsuit Closer Charles next? Smile Gate, right? I think we could probably do for something like that. Anyway, we're getting a little bit sidetracked here. They did Closer Charles dirty with that S3 animation. Come on, Smilegate, make things right. Argent Wave's Hwayoung, though, is gonna be an ice thief that's of the Leo star sign. So this is gonna be a very common star sign that you probably will recognize across many popular units. Let's go through some of those popular units, right? We'll go through all of her stats and all those things first, and then we'll talk about her kit. Then we'll move on to potential equipment that you can be running, potential artifacts that you can be running as well in this video. So the first one, the most popular star sign of the Leo star sign is Arbiter Vildred. Yeah, pretty much everyone and their grandmothers has an Arbiter Vildred laying around. This is my D-Gen 1, which is not really a perfect example for what Hwayoung will be built like, but yeah, just an example of a unit that's really popular that people know and associate their role with, right, on the team. Remnant Violet, another very popular Leo thief. He's usually built on lifesteal penetration, or he's built really fast. Another unit is going to be Tori, also a 5-star Leo thief. She is, and if you're starting to catch a pattern here, yeah, it's because all these units are just DPS units. They're insanely strong DPS units, right? Tori, known for tank busting, right? Essentially cutting through your opponents with greatest of ease. Kisei, another Leo thief, for those of you guys who are more veteran players and have used her in past metas. Very strong unit as well. And I believe, yeah, something like Savior Aiden. It's like a 4-star equivalent. Obviously, you're going to have some lower stat lines with a 4-star here, but Savior Aiden, also a free unit. Pretty much everyone has her laying around. Is a Leo attribute, a Leo star sign, right? So yeah, with this we will go back to, let's say we'll probably use Remnant Violet as an example for gearing, and we'll come back here and throw gear on him in a bit to kind of simulate what you might want your Hwayoung to look like. But without any further ado, let's go back to checking out the rest of her stats and her kit. So she actually awakens into crit rate, which is wonderful. She also has some pretty decent base speed. 116 base speed is nothing to laugh at, especially with her decently high attack as well. Okay, so let's start off with her passive here. Her passive, skill 2, is Advent of the Sura. So it says, after an ally uses a non-attack skill, activate Swallow Kick on the enemy with the highest defense. Swallow Kick says, after granting increased attack to the caster for 2 turns, attacks the enemy by leaping forward and increases combat readiness of the caster by 20%. Penetrates the target's defense by 50%. When the caster is granted Vigor, grants an extra turn. Okay, so let's break this down. There's quite a bit going on here. All you really need is a non-attack skill to proc this attack. Okay, so any opener that uses a non-attack skill, ML Politis, New Moon Luna, like any of those units can work here, okay? Now, obviously, most people are going to be gravitating towards Conqueror Lilius, because Conqueror Lilius grants Vigor, and when Hwayoung here is granted Vigor, she will get granted an extra turn after she uses this attack, which is really notable, right? If you're using Conqueror Lilius and you're granting her Vigor, and you're not waiting to grant it to herself through her own skills, which we'll talk about later, the only issue is Conqueror Lilius is kind of faded into obscurity for multiple reasons. One, she does take an extra turn, which means that you're kind of vulnerable to Bunny Dom. Bunny Dom really hard counters Hwayoung here, because if you see Lilius S3 and you take that extra turn, right, you're just going to give Bunny Dom skill null before Hwayoung is to attack, and then Hwayoung attacks into a skill null team and does no damage. So keep that in mind, right? There's a reason why C. Lilius has kind of fallen off. However, when you're playing something like a Lunatic draft format, where C. Lilius can potentially be good in the second round of drafts, where a lot of the good, better openers are kind of banned out, then yeah, you can definitely see Vigor buff being really high value and potentially really good on Hwayoung here, right? As like a pair. So both of them will take extra turns. You're both going to be dealing a lot of extra damage here, and that's cool. However, do keep in mind that you can just use her as a DPS without a Vigor buff. She does increase her combat readiness by 20%. That is nothing to laugh at, right? Getting that combat readiness increased by 20%, I'm going to bring out the trusty old calculator here and then show you guys what the calculator can do in terms of showing you what 20% really looks like. Okay, so if we go over to the calculator real quick, let's say your opener is a 310 speed unit, right? Let's say it's just something ridiculous like this. If we multiply that by 0.8, right? So Hwayoung just really needs about 250 speed to be able to cut at 20% combat readiness gains. That's if your opener's a 310 speed unit. If your opener's slower, it's going to be even less, right? Let's say your opener's only 300 speed times... Oops, hang on. 300 times, oops. Okay, we need to clear that good. 300 times 0.8, third time's a charm. If you're slower, see 240 speed, right? So at 310, you run 250 speed. At 300, you run 240 speed. If you want to be absurd and just ridiculous, let's say you wanted to open up with a Ron or a Pera. They have non-attack skills, right? Ron has an S2, it's a non-attack skill. Pera has an S3, it's a non-attack skill. Let's say you're running 320 speed openers times 0.8. Then really, you only need like a 255 speed Hwayoung to even be able to cut. So it's perfectly reasonable to be building her fast, and you don't have to build her with 0 speed and then rely on only having a Vigor buff. You actually have some versatility in her build here. She has quite a bit of effects crammed into her kit, right? Into her one passive skill here, I should mention. She also gives herself an attack buff, so you don't need anyone to go forward before her. That gives her that attack buff here. So that's also really good value, okay? We will talk about some of the shortcomings. One of them is actually the fact that she has no protection effect inside of her passive. Other units like Tori can't take more than 51% of their max health as damage, right? See, Sez has a similar effect as well there. You don't have immortality like Genoa does, right? Like Amiki does or BBK does. So you are kind of vulnerable to those types of scenarios where you could just get sniped. Let's go ahead and move on to her skill 3 though, Argent Flash. She will attack all enemies with a water scooter and increases combat readiness of the ally in the back row by 50%. She will then grant vigor to the caster for 2 turns. You can also use 10 souls to increase the damage that's dealt. So this is going to be another really good skill because it's an AoE. So not only does she have this single target attack in her passive, but this being an AoE actually kind of breaks the precedence of all Hwayoungs in the past, where all variants of Hwayoung in the past were all single target damage dealers, okay? So this AoE, and we're going to see that it actually does some decent damage, 12k damage to the frontline unit here. I think that's Basarunka. 16k damage, you know, a little less damage here on the flan and everything. But yeah, that's not bad at all, right? Keep in mind this is an AoE attack, so it's pretty good. Both of these missed, that's why. So this is probably a pretty high damage build, okay, with a lot of crit damage to be scaling that much for that difference to be showing between the crit and the non-crit. But yeah, this is it's kind of crazy, isn't it? All right, her skill 1 though, much simpler, much less stuff going on. She can attack and just dispel 1 buff from the opponent, right? With that kick, with the flick of a sandal, that's all you need. Okay, so yeah, it still does, look at there, she does good damage, 18k damage there. Now BBK isn't the tankiest unit, but boy oh boy, that's still pretty impressive. Alright, now let's move on to her artifact. Her artifact here is Summer Photogenic. And she is going to bring forth a really powerful artifact as well to boot. Not only do you increase your attack from 10 to 20%, right? At plus 15, you'd get a 15% attack boost, which is very respectable. After attacking, if the target is not an elite or boss monster, you have from a 50 to 100% chance to ignore damage sharing effects. At plus 15, this is going to be a 75% chance. Now, this is an artifact that really only works really well if you max it out. However, this effect is absolutely insane. Any type of mitigation that your opponent might have in terms of Aureus, Krau's passive, right, escort buffs and stuff from like potentially having ROL, okay, all that stuff completely ignored. No damage sharing effect. Seaside Bellona's passive that shares damage with a frontline unit, like all that stuff, right? Completely ignored. That is insane. And not only because this artifact is good on her, it's decent on Hwayoung. It's even better on units like BBK, who wants to just nuke everything, and having mitigation on the other team kind of hampers that. So this artifact will be really powerful on a variety of different thief units. I can see this being absolutely devastating. You can even run this on something like a speed Rylet. I know lifesteal Rylets typically still like to have their evasion and stuff, but a speed Rylet trying to nuke down a like mid bulk squishier unit, like a Soul Weaver protected by a knight, right? That is not bad at all. Definitely an artifact that you want to pick up. If you can't if you can't get it in your summons, just buy it from the powder shop. One copy is good enough, and then you can Bottle of Knowledge it up to plus 30 for the max level, right? Insane artifact, let me just say. Definitely highly recommend picking this up. And if you do pull multiple copies of this, let's say you pull one copy and buy one from the powder shop, keep them separate. Keep them separate, because you probably want in the future maybe more than one of them, right? So definitely really, really powerful. Yeah, so that's Hwayoung. Let's go ahead and talk about her build. She's actually coming out really soon, in a few days, July 3rd. So when it comes to her builds, we gotta get this done quickly, right? Gotta get that gear in order here. So we'll be using Remnant Violet as a pretty decent example here. We will not imprint him because I don't want to have the crit rate there to influence anything. He doesn't have anything in his passives that increases his stat line, so I think he's a pretty good unit for us to gauge. So let's go ahead and start with his the sets that you can potentially run on Hwayoung. So when it comes to her builds, I can definitely foresee two different types of builds. The Sea Lilius Vigor route, where you're probably running attack, destruction, you know, those types of things that you don't need speed sets for, right? Just more damage, maximizing damage. You could definitely be running torrent and penetration as well, right? The torrent set's gonna be really good because her S3 is actually an AoE, so torrent helps ramp up the damage there. Penetration only helps you penetrate defense on single target hits, so it's gonna be good on her S2 and her S1, but it won't help on her S3. But it is still decent to have in case the nuking part is all you're really looking for. Keep in mind, it doesn't require your opponent to do anything. You can trigger this at any point using your own non-attack skills, right? So that's kind of cool there. Okay, when it comes to the builds with speed, if you're trying to run the 250 speed type builds, then for sure speed set is probably going to be the most efficient set to be running here, especially because her base speed is not that bad. So speed will definitely help out there. Some people with monster gear can probably run a decent speed build on like destruction, but in general it's just most efficient to go speed set and then either penetration or torrent. I think a lot of people are going to be gravitating towards torrent set as their main like two-piece set here, just because you have so much added damage to the S3. So let's go for a speedier build first. We calculated and we said about 255 speed is a decent place to go for, to aim for. So we'll try to go for something like that. We can potentially use, I don't know, something like this, right? It's a 20 speeder. I think that's not terrible. It might be lacking in terms of some of the damage stats. These are from event crafting pieces, so I'm gonna slap these on and see if I can actually use them here here. Straze, this piece was also an event craft piece, so I'm gonna throw that on. And look, we're actually, without a speed set, we're actually pretty much there in terms of speed. So maybe we can slow down on speed. Let's focus on damage. We want some crit rate and crit damage. So let's go for crit damage here. Let's just take this from the Tori for now. Potentially pretty good, right? You got some defense in there here, got some crit rate, got some speed. I believe, and I have to go back and take a look, but I believe her artifact also gives defense and not HP. So also something that's really good for a lot of thieves that want to nuke, like BBK, but also pretty decent for herself. We have 2 torrent pieces, so I'm going to go for a speed set necklace. Let's go for some additional attack. Why not? Midnight God Lilius actually has a pretty decent necklace for that. Ooh, I kind of like it. Yeah, I kind of like it. Vivian's has a bit more speed, but sorry, a bit less speed, but a bit more attack. Let's go with this. I think that will be okay. Midnight God Lilius has some pretty decent gear of mine. And as for the boots, let's go for attack and crit damage. Let's go for something like this piece. Okay, so now it looks like we're just lacking crit rate here, which should be an easy fix. That's a lot of damage that we currently have going for us. Let's see what a good necklace would be here in terms of efficient stats. Kind of don't want the, that's a pretty good necklace. I don't want the HP on there though. Kind of want to, it's okay to give her HP, but in general, probably a bit more stat efficient to keep that HP a bit lower. Yeah, I'd say, ooh, it's kind of hard to find something here, right? Hard to find something here. Let's do... Perhaps something... Ooh, oh, actually, that's not a... It's a pretty terrible necklace. I don't really have speed DPS gears, if you guys can tell. Not the greatest stuff going on. So we're trying our best here. I think if I swap the chest piece for something that had a bit more crit rate, I think it could do. Let's go for crit damage. I believe Ida's had, yeah, Ida's had a little bit more crit rate here. That's not bad. So something along the lines of this could be pretty good. If I had perhaps a piece just slightly better, perhaps this one. This one would have been pretty decent piece. If I reforge that, it'll be 100 crit rate, right? So you can get a pretty decent stat line onto her here. Again, I could probably lower the speed on this helmet on this weapon and go for some additional damage. Let's see what crit rate we got over here. Oh yeah, something like this could be okay too, right? Additional crit rate could be decent. I don't want to be too slow, so that way if we're overcapped on crit, we can come back here and we can choose a better necklace. Just want to give you guys a full picture of what we could potentially be going for. Yeah, something along the lines of this. It's a little bit less crit rate, but we can potentially make up for that as well if we go for the boot. Or maybe we can go for a better weapon. Perhaps a better weapon. Let's just see. What is the most crit rate we can be getting here? Okay, perhaps this one. If I went and modified this resistance out for crit damage and then reforge this, you're gonna get some extra crit rate there. But maxing out the crit rate, yeah, not super duper important for this particular moment right now. You can definitely finagle the gear around and then get it to show what you need. But I would say going for 250 speed is probably the safest bet that we can go for here. With the amount of damage that we currently have, it's actually not that bad. But yeah, I'd say we did it's pretty good like this, right? Something of that sort. If you're going for a full damage build, let's go ahead and try something like that. Let's still do it on Torrent set, because I think that's going to be the most efficient. I don't really have full DPS gear either. I'm more of a tank down sort of player anyway. But if I go for some... ooh, that's actually not bad. Yeah, let's go for something like this. Defense is really good for her. So we'll do that, and let's go for some crit rate here. Typically you don't need a ton of crit damage. Let's go for something like that. Ooh, actually, yeah, let's go for this. The 13 speed is, actually no, hang on, we're going for a 0 speed build, right? If you're going for a 0 speed build, it's going to be even better to just go for like Torrent like this. Oh, that has a lot of speed. Okay, it's fine. Okay. I'm quite surprised by the type of gear I have, honestly. This is a lot of HP. This is also not great. Okay, let's go for 8 attack percent. You could do something like this, right? Modify that effect res out, doesn't really matter. Let's just slap that on for right now. Yeah. We could also potentially go for like a 0 speed effect res build. I don't know why you'd go for an effect res build. You could also build her as a bruiser if you're going 0 speed. Give her some bulk and stuff as well. Could work out decently. I think I like the chest piece here. Ooh, but maybe not. Maybe we don't need that much effect crit damage. I do like this chest piece though. Let's use the one with a little bit more crit rate and a little less speed, right? And we'll go for attack as our piece here. Ooh, we're definitely, oh, never mind. We're definitely gonna need the crit rate. Definitely need the crit rate. Meru has a decent piece, and this needs to be a destruction piece. So if we go for destruction, I'm gonna go for, well, actually, I kind of like this torrent piece more. Let's go for destruction set here. This is going, okay. Let's do, definitely needs to be something with crit rate. Okay, maybe we'll go with the mirror one, and do we have anything with crit rate here? Don't really need the speed. Okay, we're over capped by a little bit, but you can definitely see where we're going with this, right? You can go for a ton of damage. Oh wait, hang on, we have triple torrent. That's the problem here. That's the problem. Okay, wow, we're already at like 5,000 attack almost, and we don't even have our full destruction set yet. When we go for full destruction set, okay, let's say something like this. I know it's not perfect in terms of crit rate. You could probably, again, find a place to mod in an extra crit somewhere along the line. Like, this can definitely be better, right? The weapon can definitely improve. But yeah, let's just say something along the lines of this. So you're almost maxed out on crit damage. You have a ton of attack. Honestly, if I didn't like have all these speed rolls in here, you can easily cap out on this damage output. So it could be really nice, right? So different ways that you can be building is with destruction torrent, speed torrent, and it's all up to what team comps you're going to be using her in. Do keep in mind that you want to go for very specific uses for certain units. It is nice to sometimes build a ton of generic units, but if you know what types of teams you're going to be fighting that are going to utilize her, right, then try to build to fight those types of teams. What I mean by that is if you're always fighting slow teams and you know, hey, I'm going to lock in C. Lilius and then put like Hwayoung in there, that could be a really great way to utilize a slower build. If you're always fighting and speed racing people, probably don't go for the 0 speed build and go for something a bit faster, more versatile, because that way you can combo her with things like Politis and other non-attack skill openers. That can just be a better use of your build, right? So you're able to be more versatile and flexible into those types of teams. But yeah, overall, that is going to be her kind of gear overview there and how I would potentially build her. I would obviously be going into like frivels and kind of min-maxing a little bit more, but that is me personally. But yeah, those builds are pretty solid. Let's go ahead and take a look at her artifacts here. She's a thief, and thieves have some really good artifacts that you can run. First off, Wind Rider. Wind Rider, absolutely amazing because you get the extra attack and you get the ability to go into stealth. So stealthing is absolutely amazing for these DPSs. Right, super good. I'm trying to find my plus 27 one, but I can't seem to find it here. Yeah, incredibly strong to go into stealth, and then getting that extra damage boost as well for the next attack is just invaluable. Oh, there it is. So yeah, if you have a plus 31, you get 20% attack, and then next time you increase the attack of yourself by 40% for a turn at the start of the turn. It's pretty good. Keep in mind, Hwayoung does give herself an attack buff at the start, so you're scaling pretty nicely with this extra attack that's from the artifact. Alexa's Basket, probably not something you're really going to need unless you're just trying to fish for that greater attack buff here, because with the attack buff that she grants herself, she's already going to be pretty decently strong. When you're taking a look at the other damage output that she has, you can also, RNL, always something that, you know, you can always be really gimmicky with your thieves. I've lost matches to like RNL Genoas, so yeah, just do with that information as you will, right? It is, oh boy, it is dumb. Yeah, you probably wouldn't go for stuff like Dust Devil or anything, because their basic skill doesn't really do all that much. So yeah, essentially I'd probably boil it down to Wind Rider, and her own artifact obviously being incredibly good. You don't necessarily go for Evasion. She doesn't seem like the kind that's going to build a lot of bulk, and she doesn't have any other built-in survivability to kind of synergize with these types of artifacts. So Wind Rider and her own artifact, both solid options, and essentially probably what I'd go for, honestly, out of everything here. There's not really much else that is probably best in slot for her. Again, you can fish with Alexa's Basket for the greater attack buff, or troll with RNL if you really want. But those are the 4 artifacts I'd gravitate towards. But yeah, that is going to be it for the Hwayoung first impressions. She does look rather fun. I don't know if she'll fit my playstyle at all, but I am looking forward to getting her regardless. So with that being said though, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.